This is Adam King from Aliens Don't Ring Doorbells, and you're listening to Madness to Creation.
Go ahead, say it.
Welcome to the Madness to Creation podcast, where self-care and music merge. This is Maddie. How are you? And on this podcast, we have pole dancer slash PR agent slash blogger Meijin Bruttomesso out of New York joining us on the podcast. And basically what I wanted to do with this podcast is just talk about like what adjustments she had to make as a PR agent through the COVID-19 pandemic, and how like her exercising, her gymnastics past, and her pole dancing plays a role in her mental health. And she's also an advocate for mental health, and it was just so much fun just talking to her, getting to know her and all that stuff. And she has such a passion for classic rock, like bands like the Rolling Stones and Motley Crue and bands like that. And she also has a passion for developing artists, and she also plugs a few of her projects. And one thing that was really cool about her project is she took on a former NFL player who played for the San Diego, well, now Los Angeles Chargers, and the Las Vegas Raiders. They were Oakland, obviously, at the time. Joe Barksdale. And Joe Barksdale not only was featured on this podcast, but he has a full-page feature on very esteemed magazine, People Magazine. And it was so cool how Joe went from little old us to having a page feature on People Magazine. I mean, for crying out loud, People Magazine has they have their own game show with host Leah Remini on the Game Show Network called People Puzzler, and that's such a fun game show to watch. But I digress. And Meijin and I just have this lovely conversation. She is a PR agent for Effective Immediately PR, and I really want to encourage you, if you're an upstart band or an indie recording artist, to look up Meijin and also look up Effective Immediately PR. They provide affordable service, and not only will they get you press, they also provide a consultation for bands and help with tours, help with marketing, help with social media, everything like that. And they offer a very affordable price. So look up Effective Immediately PR on, just do a Google search and you'll be able to find them. And also, we are looking at setting up a Patreon as well. And I really want to stress with this Patreon, it's not for us to make a profit. It's basically just to help cover our overhead costs. And also, from here on in, we are going to provide a link on the Madness to Creation website to where you can donate to Tom George's GoFundMe. Tom George is another esteemed PR agent that has a brain tumor, is battling lymphoma, and he was life-flighted to a hospital in Iowa City, Iowa, and cancer stinks and everything like that. And the GoFundMe is essentially set up to help Tom and his wife Tracy pay for the medical expenses, and especially the losses that occurred from the COVID-19 pandemic. And I really want to encourage you, if you just have a few dollars, just help them out. Even if it's just like $2, that would be really beneficial and everything like that. I'm one of those people, if 100 people donate $2, to me, that's more impactful than one person donating $200. I really want to encourage you to help Tom out. And Meijin, like I said, she was a lovely guest and everything like that, and she has an open door anytime she wants to come back to the podcast. So just follow Effective Immediately PR. Look them up on Facebook and Instagram, and also their official website. And also find this podcast on Spotify, SoundCloud, Spreaker, GeoSav, and YouTube, iHeartRadio, Podchaser, and Podcast Addict. And on that note, if you could just tell a friend about this podcast, and if you could just even just follow us on Facebook, TikTok, or Instagram, or Twitter, any of those platforms, it does something wondrous for like algorithms and everything like that. And you'll get to hear some more interviews and everything like that. And we have a couple incredible interviews coming up with Moby and Duran Duran and the Dadsons. And it's just an honor and a privilege to have these people on. And I want to thank you guys so much for listening. Please take care of yourself in some way, shape, or form, without doing anything illegal, of course. And if you're not able to take care of yourself, reach out to somebody and that person will help you. Or you can reach out to us at madnesscreation@gmail.com. And also, if you're interested in being on this podcast, email us at madnesscreation@gmail.com because we are starting a local unsigned feature as well to try to give upstart bands a voice. All right. On that note, have a great day and enjoy this podcast with Meijin Bruttomesso. Take away, Meijin. Welcome to the Madness to Creation podcast, where self-care and music merge. This is Maddie. How are you? And with me, I have esteemed slash blogger slash pole dancer slash everything extraordinaire, Meijin Bruttomesso. And she is out of New York. And Meijin, thank you so much for joining the Madness to Creation podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So how's your week going so far?
It's going pretty well. I mean, I don't know exactly what day it is. It's Wednesday, right?
Yeah, it sure is. Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah. I mean, I feel like this is the pandemic mood where it's pretty much the same day every day, except for the weekends seem to stand out as a little less hectic, but going okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And how has the pandemic affected you? In terms of your PR work, your pole dancing work, whatever it is that you do, how has that affected you?
So, I mean, I can't really complain too much. I've been really fortunate that I've been able to work from home basically the last year plus at this point. Being that everything is online now, so many artists are releasing digitally and everything's kind of streaming, and we don't have to rely so much on hard copy magazines and in-person interviews as much as before, back in the day of the 80s and 90s. Oh, and before that, wow. That's kind of the plus of all this technology that we have is we can still do our job pretty much remotely, and artists can still release music. Obviously, a huge part of the industry is on a bit of a hiatus. Obviously, the live music scene, which is creeping back slowly, but I think people are going to be a little hesitant on that. So long story short is, I've been really lucky on the music side. People are still releasing music. People are still moving forward, doing live streams, trying to take advantage of platforms and podcasts and things like that to kind of have a virtual performance, I guess. With the pole stuff is mostly a hobby for me, but I am also really fortunate that I kind of get to do it as a job. I dance at a metal bar here in Brooklyn called Lucky 13 Saloon on the weekends. I would love to do it more, but of course, as I mentioned, I have a human job on the weekdays, 9 to 5er, as they say. And, that obviously was put on a break as well with, bars and restaurants closing down for a long time. And that has been, more so for the bar owners and managers and stuff and bartenders. It's been a little rockier for them. And other dancers who rely on it, of course. Like I said, I'm really lucky that I have another job to supplement that. But yeah, it's been really rocky for, bar restaurant people, just because of how back and forth it's been with curfews and opening dates and limitations and all of that stuff. And, capacities and limitations of those sorts, have just been so up and down. And, that's been difficult. So now it seems like things are opening up a little bit and getting a little bit more stable. So hopefully it'll stay like that for a while, and then kind of climb back up to where we used to be pre-COVID.
Definitely. And I was going to say, I'm based out of Iowa and you're based out of New York, right?
Yeah, I'm in Brooklyn. Yeah.
Yeah, you're in Brooklyn. So in Iowa, it's been just kind of, I'm sure we both had different experiences in terms of COVID and everything. In Iowa,
yeah,
if you were to drive by right now, you wouldn't even know that there was a pandemic in Iowa. Masks are optional.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything's pretty much opened up. We have, we're kind of known for our state wrestling tournament here. Not like the pro wrestling, but like amateur wrestling, obviously, although that'd be cool if there's a pro wrestling tournament. And like the venue was like half capacity and everything like that. And there was like 8,000 people there and they didn't even require masks or anything like that. So, and like in New York, how different has that been, like in terms of pandemic? Because you guys have been on the news a lot in terms of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes for any large city. If it's LA or New York or anywhere in between, and also just in general, kind of population and all of that will affect it. And even I'm from California originally, and I feel like every town/city there has kind of its own rules depending on just mere population numbers and how that's going. And of course, the state's decision on masks and those mandates and things like that. But from New York's perspective, for me, I mean, I've tried to stay home as much as possible. I'm kind of a germaphobe naturally. So to me, carrying around Purell and hand wipes everywhere is pretty much my world anyway. So
Sure.
That wasn't too jarring in terms of a change being like, oh, you should wash your hands all the time and use Purell and all that stuff. I said, I do that all the time. I live in New York. When I moved here, I was told how disgusting and dirty it was. So to me, I've just, automatically felt like I needed to have a cleanser with me at all times. And I feel like that's just gotten worse with age and paranoia, but that's a whole nother story we could get into. But in terms of the masks, I mean, we're still required to wear them inside. They're recommended if you're going to be in any sorts of crowds. Obviously, going to any sort of facility that has other people around you, the gym, restaurants, bars, all those places, you have to wear a mask if you go inside. Bars and restaurants, like if you're sitting down and eating or drinking actively, you can obviously take your mask off. But if you stand up to go order or use the restroom or something like that, you have to be wearing your mask when you're not seated. So that's pretty much what it's kind of evolved into is, not an apocalyptic sort of stay inside or you're going to, get toasted alive or something if you walk outside of your house. But it's also just, be precautionary in terms of, and choose your battles in terms of going out, like how much you actually need to go out or, all of that. They're still advising, of course, like stay at home as much as possible, wear a mask wherever you go. And of course, we're rolling out the vaccine also, so that is showing some progress. But slowly but steadily, I hope we get back to somewhat normal, by the fall or winter or something like that. So, but it's going to be a strange change to go back to what we called normal before.
Oh, definitely. And I interviewed an artist, like, she goes by the name of Meta Dead, and she's in a band called the Dead Deads. Have you ever heard of them?
Yeah, they're from Nashville, right?
I think so. I'm one of those people that's notoriously awful on where like bands are from and stuff like that. So if you say Nashville, I'm gonna believe you. And what she said is that when live concerts return and stuff like that, there's gonna be a paradigm shift. So in terms of like your public relations work, how has that adjusted? Like, and I cannot believe did you say you've been working in PR since the 90s?
Oh, no. I was back in the 90s when print was, and before the 90s, obviously, like print was pretty much essential because no internet until
I
early
gotcha.
90s. Yeah.
I gotcha, because I was kind of wondering.
I feel like I'd be a vampire.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way.
The secret is out.
Yeah,
the secret is out. I'm a vampire. I was 30 in the 90s. I am now much older.
Nice. That's awesome. And so do you consider yourself like a night owl and stuff like that? Like, is that when you get like a lot of your PR work done, or like, how does that work? Like, in terms of that, like with everything, like what you do with your job and everything like that, like, does it get stressful and like in terms of like your mental health and stuff? Like if you feel like you don't meet expectations or anything like that?
Well, I think with or without a pandemic, I think PR is a pretty stressful job. I can't complain too much again, because I get to deal with music, and that's pretty much always been the center of my life. So, I'm very grateful and very happy to be working in an industry that revolves around something that is truly the love of my life. So that is, something that I always have to remind myself of on a daily basis, or, weekly basis, when it's getting really overwhelming. Just to know that it could be way worse. I'd be doing some finance job that I probably could have been, shoved into, and hate doing it and be bored and stressed and with people that aren't my vibe all day long, every day. So I have to always remind myself, if I am getting too overwhelmed or stressed or frustrated with artists or not being able to do what I want to do, is that at least I am doing something in the realm of what I, enjoy, outside of work. So, it does take a toll on your mental health, of course, and your stress levels and all of that, because what job doesn't? And
sure.
Also it does ask a lot of you, as, you might know about artists, they can be perfectionists and they can be very demanding, and they can, not understand all the ins and outs of the industry in terms of, why they aren't famous yet. Why isn't Pitchfork writing about them? Things like that, where it's just, a constant kind of teaching and educating process with artists about what's going on in the landscape of media and what it takes to become an artist, or, what might be lacking. And that's always a delicate subject as well. So, I always joke that, I'm kind of a babysitter in a way, because it's a lot of like holding hands and like making sure they don't fall and cry and get upset about not being perfect or doing something, right away, where it's not an overnight success. And that's not always the story that everyone has. And everyone that looks like an overnight success has obviously been working at a long time, most likely, unless they're, have a very lucky end. That's a, whole different case. But on the average, I think there's a lot more behind the scenes than people know about, in terms of becoming a reputable artist or a household name, and a lot of time. So for me, I guess working at home has been a big change. I'm lucky that I also am very focused when I'm at home, and I kind of just hunker down and say, like, these are my work hours. I just got to get it done. I know a lot of other people struggle with being really distracted, and, that's kind of been a big change, is kind of separating their work environment from their living space, and just having to block out that time and be really, really focused on work, even when you're at home, where you should just be, literally Netflix and chilling. So, So for me, I guess it hasn't been any more or less stressful in terms of the job itself, in terms of what it requires of me. But I think just the change in environment, and also having to really be even more structured with myself, because I know that I'm not in an office with that environmental cue of you should be working right now, is not there. So I think, honing that skill of being able to focus has been a little bit more intense, but overall, like, I think, there's been some added pressure as well of, no live music, and, artists being kind of struggling about, like, what am I supposed to do if I'm just releasing music? Who's going to really hear it if I'm not playing out live or selling merch or whatever. And that's kind of been, I think, a fear for a lot of artists, is not being able to be heard as much or getting the exposure they would normally get, because they're lacking that huge outlet, which is live shows.
Absolutely.
So there's been some, I guess, added pressure in terms of doing our best to get exposure on media more so, and just trying to utilize online platforms, which is just a whole different dynamic and a whole different route that, maybe we haven't relied on as heavily before. So everything is just kind of in flux. But that's kind of like the nature of the beast anyway, is that there's things always changing. There's always these new platforms people are using. Like, I'm still even struggling to understand what and how to use TikTok. It's just one of those things where there's always something new that we're learning and all of that. So this has just been a bigger change, and a bigger number of new places that we have to, assimilate to, I guess is the best word.
Oh, definitely. And by the way, I love TikTok, and actually Madness Creation is actually evolving to where we're going to use a lot, and along with podcasts, we're going to be using TikTok a lot. I'm going to be doing like Minute of Madness music reviews and stuff like that, and just creating like little skits instead of just typing up a review and stuff like that. Just try to keep it fresh, and so like, first of all, tell us.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. What was that?
Will you be dancing will you be dancing and reviewing at the same time, like a TikTok dance review?
Well, part of with me is I do stand-up comedy on the side. I know that's kind of hard for people to believe,
okay.
But I do. And so I kind of use that, just kind of use my creativity. And basically I do a lot of impressions. I have like a lot of pro wrestling impressions that I actually work on and stuff. And so I'll be using that, and just wherever it just comes into my mind and stuff. And just like doing just kind of quick reaction videos, like, and stuff like that, and I was going to say, like, first of all, tell us the name of like the PR company that you work for. And also kind of what I'm interested in is like, what are a couple of do's and don'ts when it comes to like artists working with you, or like a publication like us when it comes to working with you?
Oh, wow. Those are such big questions. Except for the first one. The first one is easy. It's called Effective Immediately PR. It's part of Gramophone Media. That's kind of the PR company I work with. And then also outside of that, I run Rocker Stalker, which started out as a blog and then kind of developed into an events company where I've put on at least 500 shows, I think, in the last 10 years at, festivals locally, nationally. And I have obviously continued doing that, obviously, up until the pandemic and stuff. So that's kind of on hold until live music is back in full swing. But to, I guess, address the PR side of things. Oh, wow. Some dues for working with me. I would say a big thing that I think a lot of artists struggle with, especially independent artists, when they're first starting a campaign or never having worked with a publicist before, is just knowing when you're ready, and having that stuff ready for publicity. If you approach a publicist and you're like, hey, can you, work with me, and you say like, oh, like, do you have any music? And they say no. Then obviously, you got to get your content together. I think that's a huge thing, is like being very, very prepared for, to put content out, have your photos and your music ready, and maybe have someone write up a bio about the band, really think of good reasons why you should have a publicist. Like, why should people listen to your music? Why are you cooler than the other band that doesn't have a publicist? Obviously, a big thing is, do you have the finances and all of those things? And that's a little bit more logistical, but I guess in terms of just, bullet points, I think having everything ready is important, and being prepared. Secondly is, I guess, being open-minded, and also remembering that if you're hiring someone to do a job for you, whether it's publicity or plumbing or anything like that, you should probably take that person's advice. If you're paying someone to do a job for you, I would say be open-minded and really kind of try to learn from the person that has been doing their job longer than you, or who has had experience in it. I definitely wouldn't question somebody who's a really good songwriter. Like, are you sure you know how to write a song if you're doing it well? I think the same goes both ways, is that, if you're going to kind of be if working with you is going to be pulling teeth in terms of opportunities or anything like that, then that's a little bit of a struggle. Like if you're turning down opportunities left and right because it doesn't seem good enough for you, I think you have to kind of re-examine that, because any opportunity when you're starting out is a good opportunity to really build yourself up and build your credibility with media, all of those things. So I think those are two huge factors. And then I guess one more would just be, be conscientious of deadlines and lead time and things like that, because it kind of goes back to being prepared and ready, and all of that is knowing that this is a long-term process. It's not something that's going to happen overnight where, you can just drop a single tomorrow, unless you're maybe like a SoundCloud rapper with a huge social media following. And that's a different world where you can just drop a single and people will be all over it or stoked to hear it. There's oftentimes a longer process ahead of releasing a song or an album or a video that people aren't really aware of. They think that people just kind of wake up and they're like, I'm releasing a video this Friday. Well, it's unbeknownst to them, it's probably months of lead time up to that. So I think a lot of people just need to take that into account. And that, I guess that goes back to kind of having everything ready to go and knowing that, you want to make sure that you're giving yourself enough time to prepare for a release of something, because often the downfall for a lot of bands is just releasing all of their content at one time too soon with basically no warning and no lead time. And so there's no chance for people to really get into it or consider it for features and things like that on the media side, because they're already focused on other music that they were pitched months ago, which makes sense. If you have a schedule that you're adhering to, and you're writing about music that was pitched to you 2 months ago, something that comes into your inbox 2 days before it's released, it's like, I'm so sorry, but it's just way too last minute. You're going to have to give me another time way down the line or more content in order to consider you. And that can get a little dicey and frustrating for people if they don't know that that's kind of the nature of how media works sometimes. And you can speak to that too. Obviously, it probably helps you if you have more time ahead of something to be like, oh yeah, I can fit that in, weeks down the road, rather than, hey, I'm releasing this tomorrow, can you review it? I think that that's a little stressful and unrealistic for most writers.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And kind of one thing I kind of struggle with in terms of sending reviews and stuff like to PR companies, whether it's you or another company, is like, let's say I'm not really into the music. Is it better? Do you feel like on your end, it's better for us just to say, hey, we're not interested? Or is it better that, like kind of like the Hollywood saying, bad press is better than no press, you know what I mean? So how do you look at that? That's kind of a duality for me. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So coming from a writing background myself, I started out as a journalist before I did booking and PR. I personally, and also from a reader's perspective, I honestly would rather read a review telling, or a list of blog or a list of albums or something like that, or recommendations, things I should be listening to rather than shouldn't. Because, why do I need to be told like what is bad out there?
Absolutely.
I think it's kind of better to know. I think it's better to kind of know like which things you should be, listening to, or what you might like, as opposed to like, here are the things you don't like. Well, was that helping me find what I like? It's kind of bringing you back to the problem of just, there's so much music out there. I'd rather be given some kind of tips on how to navigate things that I might like. But I mean, I guess for comedic purposes, bad reviews are always kind of funny. Like if you take a step back and you're like, man, this person really took the time to tear this album apart and just like go in on it and talk about how bad it was. And, you know, sometimes it can be kind of funny if you're not the artist, but you know, that's my like dark sense of humor. So I apologize, but sometimes I think it's funny when everyone's like, oh, I want to be on Pitchfork so badly. It's like, well, have you seen some of the stuff that they write about you? Do you really want to be torn apart on like one of the biggest music blogs? Like that can kind of really injure your, you know, your profile. Like, do you really want that? Because they definitely have no problem writing a negative review, and giving you, you know, 1 out of X stars. But I guess for me, again, like when my editor or, you know, when people would send me music, I would always pick the stuff that I would like. Because for me, I think it's, and same with booking shows, you know, I think it's the same thing. You would rather highlight bands that you think are good than have a bunch of like 5 crappy bands in a row that you're like, I hate all of these bands, you know.
Yeah.
No, like, why would people come to hear that? You know, they want to hear something that's going to make them feel great and have a good time.
Absolutely.
So, but I guess from a publicist standpoint, if we're pitching you something, or any writer for that matter, and you don't like it, I feel like it's better to just hear back someone say, you know, this isn't really for me. So I'm just going to pass on this, or, you know, I'm not liking this particular song, but if there's another one, or, you know, you want to send me so I can listen to it, maybe I like that one better, then I think just communicating your taste on things could be better, because, and not you specifically, I mean, in general, people that we pitch, you know, so that there's more clarity and communication about that, because sometimes the frustration of being a publicist is sending out a ton of pitches and not hearing back from anyone when you know that they got it, because, you know, we have our, you know, secret little ways of tracking emails, but, and saying like, okay, like what gives? You just don't like it? Or you just getting too much? Or are you just not interested in responding? So I think sometimes I would rather hear like, no, I don't like this, or no, I don't want to cover this. And just kind of taking that person out of the mix, rather than kind of revisiting that with them and kind of not understanding why they're not getting back to me about something.
For sure.
Because then at least we know, and then that's also feedback we can provide to our artists. You know, I think artists actually benefit from knowing how people feel about their music when we're pitching it, so they don't kind of just feel like they're floating in limbo until somebody finally picks up something. Kind of hearing any feedback will help them grow and kind of help them understand how their music is landing and what's realistic.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll be honest with you, that's kind of something that I struggle with. I'll be the first to admit, because like I have a full-time job and everything like that. So that advice is definitely really helpful in terms of providing that necessary feedback and everything like that. So, and now I was going to say, I know you only have a few more minutes, and I'm also working on a book. I don't know if I told you that. It's basically called Lighthouses in the Darkest Distances, How We in the Music Industry Get Through Difficult Times. And kind of a couple questions I have pertaining to the book is like, what is a soundtrack to your life? Like, what is there like a song, an album, a genre, or a band that you go to when you're just having a crap day?
So my answer for every question regarding any band that I go back to, that I love forever, that I will never ever leave behind for any other band, is the Rolling Stones. That's my go-to for everything band. I've loved them since I was 8 years old. The first CD I owned by them was Beggar's Banquet, which was kind of a weird choice for a first Rolling Stones album, but it's a good early one. My favorite album of theirs is Let It Bleed. I actually have the cover of that album tattooed on my leg. Contrary to most people's guesses, it is not a hamburger. It is the cover of Let It Bleed. And I've been the butt of many jokes because of that, but you know, it's fine. I've tolerated it, and I can laugh at it now. That's a story for another day regarding tattoos and all of that. But the Rolling Stones, Let It Bleed. That band and that album will perpetually make me happy no matter what. And yeah, I mean, they're just an all around amazing band. And, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are going to fight me on how much I love them, but that's okay. It's for me. So
yeah, absolutely. Let them fight, and I got a confession to make. Like, I've only heard maybe 2 or 3 Rolling Stone songs, and I will definitely check out that album. I mean, I was like more into, like, when I was a kid, I was more into like Def Leppard, Led Zeppelin, the Beach Boys, Johnny Cash. I had a very eclectic taste in music. So, and Rolling Stones.
Yeah, those are all great.
Yeah, I'll have to definitely check them out. And the 3 songs I heard, I love. So that's definitely on my to-do list. And I was gonna say, like, tell me a couple artists that you're working with right now that people that you're like, you need to drop everything that you're doing and listen to this shit right now. And obviously Joe Barksdale, I've been actually jamming his music and everything like that. So again, thank you so much for, hooking me up with him and stuff like that. So just tell me a couple artists that people should jam that you represent.
I mean, I would definitely say Joe's music, just like a 2-second background on him. If you're a sports fan, you would probably also like Joe because he used to play in the NFL for many years. He's retired and now full-time musician. So, but he's really cool. He's got like a whole entire 52-week project coming out this year. So he has a song coming out every week. And he actually has a Star Wars based album coming out on May 4th, of course. May the 4th be with you, obviously. Yeah. So I think he's just so cool because he has these really fun concepts. He actually wrote an entire guest blog one time about Darth Vader, and he's a big Star Wars fan, as am I. So we connected a lot on that, and I think it's fun to incorporate other things outside of just straight music that into your work. And then I guess another artist I would say would probably be actually just started working with her. Her name is Violet Orlandi. She's from Brazil, and she's actually really well known on YouTube. She covers a lot of hard rock acts. She's done like 9 Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson. I don't know if I'm allowed to say Marilyn Manson anymore, but. Anyway, she's gotten millions and millions of views on those. She has got like almost 1 million followers on YouTube, and she's releasing her first originals album this May. So that's gonna be super cool. But yeah, you can find all of her stuff all over YouTube, and she just released a song called The Worm a couple weeks ago. That's an original. But yeah, so I think those are definitely 2 artists that I think have really interesting and cool backgrounds and stories behind their music that you should definitely check out.
Definitely. And kind of one fun question I have for you to pertain to your pole dancing. Give me a song that is the least likely song that you would pole dance to and people would be like, what the hell are you dancing to?
Me personally?
Yeah.
Or like pole dancers in general?
You personally.
I guess any Disney song would be really hilarious, but I mean, honestly, I think people are always surprised if someone dances to like a super like classical piece. But I did gymnastics when I was a kid, and it was pretty common to perform to classical music. So to me, it's not super weird in terms of my background and, how I feel about classical music because I love it. But I think as a pole dancer, people are like, it's kind of like a jarring, or it's like a juxtaposition that you wouldn't expect of like classical music and, pole dance, which has its own entire story and reputation behind it. So, yeah.
Definitely. And I was going to say like do you have any mental health messages for our listeners in terms whether it's female empowerment, self-care, or anything like that?
I mean, for me, I think something that's always gotten me through, because I have definitely struggled with, depression and difficult moments in my life. And, I won't get too involved with that, but, be it breakups or family things, or just the stress of living in a pandemic world, or the stress of the modern age. Movement has really saved me. I'm not saying everyone needs to go out and start running marathons or pole dancing or whatever it is. I think finding a way to just move every day or get your endorphins going has always been really helpful to me since I was a kid. It's always been a good escape to go do something active, if you're able to, of course. I think music and finding not even music in general or physical fitness or anything like that necessarily, but finding a hobby or something that you truly enjoy doing and that you can focus on, and that kind of takes your mind off of whatever issue you're dealing with, can be really healthy and helpful, whether it's, knitting or, art or whatever it is that, you find kind of soothes you. I think that's always helpful. And of course, if you want to get really clinical about it, obviously I highly recommend talking to a therapist. In this day and age, we're really lucky to have telemedicine and all of that. So, if you're able to, and you feel like you're at your wit's end, I just can't recommend enough finding a mental health professional to talk to, because that can, you need an objective perspective sometimes on these issues.
Definitely. I couldn't agree with you. I couldn't agree with you anymore. So, and Meijin Bruttomesso, thank you so much for taking the time to interview
Yes.
for Madness to Creation podcast, and you enjoy your evening. So thank you so much for rescheduling and just for being awesome and for being you. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.